In 1872, a heartwarming tale of Benedita, how one act changed lives and revealed incredible truths. In a small rural town, where whispers carried heavy burdens and dreams often felt like a distant mirage, lived a widow named Benedita. She was the heart of her family, raising 3 children through love, hard work, and a passionate spirit. Once a proud baker, her goods no longer filled the bellies or hearts of the townsfolk. The sweet, warm sense of her pastries had faded, just like the kindness among neighbors, buried under the weight of class divide. Benedita felt their missed joy in every loaf she kneaded and every pastry she crafted, and it ached like an open wound. Every morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Benedita opened her bakery. The tiny bell above the door chimed, but the footsteps were scarce. Pies, breads, and cookies lined the shelves, delicious memories waiting to be savored, and yet no one came. Her heart sank deeper with each empty hour. The rich flaunted their wealth, while those struggling to make ends meet looked upon her with weariness, suspicions clouding their minds. Benedita fought against her sorrow, but what could she do when the elite played a different game, one that left so many behind? When her eyes were red from tears, Benedita overheard something that turned her sorrow into steam. A local politician, sneeringly discussing plans to cut funding for the town's veterans' hospital, was the last straw. These men and women put their lives on the line, and yet, they stood to lose their support. The lamp of hope flickered dimly in her heart as she chewed over those words, with images of veterans coming home, their faces worn and desperate, freshly etched in her mind. How could her neighbors be so cruel? She needed to act, for her family and for those soldiers who sacrificed everything. Fueled by a desperate determination, Benedita decided to organize a bake sale. It would be her last hope to revive the bakery and raise funds for the hospital. But as she sketched out her invitation on scrap paper, her heart raced with trepidation. What would the wealthy think? Could the wounded spirits of the working class unite with hers? She wrote to everyone in hopes of healing fractures that had grown too deep, join us for a day of baking, sharing, and healing. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The bake sale day dawned under thick clouds. Tension crackled as the affluent townspeople arrived, eyes darting, intrigued yet doubtful. The working class watched with folded arms, skepticism etched on their brows. Benedita stood behind her table, laden with the fruits of her labor, her pastries fresh and warm, the air thick with the scent of cinnamon and sugar. But that warmth felt icy in her gut. Friends, she began, her voice quaking slightly. These treats are made with love. Let us not forget those who have fought so valiantly for our freedoms. Her words hung in the air, opening hearts and drawing gazes, but then, doubt spiraled. A voice speared through, accusing her of greed and hoarding wealth. The crowd stirred, filled with murmurs like a rising storm. Benedita's heart pounded. Would they choose fear over compassion? Her eyes scanned faces those she once shared laughter with, shared bread. There was a moment, suspended in time, where the weight of their history, their struggles, and their humanity danced just out of reach. This was where everything turned. Would they turn toward each other, or pull apart once more? The silence was deafening. Benedita could feel every heartbeat echoing in her ears. The tension in the crowd was palpable, a mix of disbelief and resentment simmering just below the surface. She shook off her fears, focusing on the faces of her children, their wide eyes filled with hope and worry. They were watching their mother, waiting for her to create a spark that could ignite a change. Look around, she exclaimed, voice rising to cut through the whispers. These pastries tell a story of unity, of love. Every cookie and pie is a reminder that life is sweeter when we share. She raised her hands, palms up, inviting them to reconsider, to see beyond the crusts and fillings. Slowly, a stirring began within the crowd. An elder from the back, his face lined with years of labor, stepped forward. "Benedita," he said, thick with emotion, "we've had our quarrels, but I won't forget how you brought us together at the harvest festival. Your pies brought laughter then, don't we owe it to those who fought for us to find it again?" A ripple of murmurs coursed through the assembly, slowly morphing from skepticism to curiosity. Benedita's heart fluttered, the tiniest gleam of hope igniting inside her. Then, a woman, whose elegant dress marked her as part of the affluent crowd, took a step closer, scanning the display. "I could use some better bread in my pantry," she said, crossing her arms. But there was a softness in her eyes, a glimpse of recognition of shared humanity. "That's it," Benedita called out, feeling emboldened. "Let our community be a bakery. We can create something new together, a partnership with no walls, only doors open to everyone." The first to approach was the elder, who reached for a warm loaf and held it like he was cradling a babe. Other voices started to chime in, sharing their own connections to her baked goods, to their shared pasts. The crowd shifted, tension dissipating like morning fog. Little by little, people began to step forward, drawn to the comfort of warmth and kindness Benedita was offering. The elder took a bite of the bread and smiled. "This is freedom," he declared, his eyes sparkling. "Let us not only save the hospital, let us save the heart of our town." Cheers erupted, lifting Benedita's spirits higher than she'd ever dared to dream. Gifts began to flow, and some brought baked goods to share, others simple donations, all moving toward a common goal. Benedita could hardly believe her eyes. The bakery table transformed into a symbol of hope, solidarity, and renewal. But just as the sense of unity began to rise, the door swung open with a harsh creak. In stepped a politician, the same man who had sneered about the veterans just days before. His expression was a mix of bewilderment and anger, eyes narrowing at the sight before him. "What is going on here?" His voice sliced through the joyous chatter like a knife. Benedita's heart sank. She could sense the fear returning, the deep-seated divisions threatening to swallow them whole. But she stood her ground, her small frame steadfast among the larger figures around her. "I'm here to bring us together," she said, her voice unwavering. "To remember those who fight for us both on the battlefield and in our community." The crowd began to murmur, and Benedita knew the moment of truth was upon them. Would they rally behind her, against the outsider who sought to divide? Could they find strength in their unity? As the tension thickened, she braced herself for what was to come, uncertain of how this chapter would unfold but ready to face whatever lay ahead. Would compassion reign, or would darkness fall? The answers hung in the air, pregnant with unspoken words, waiting for someone to give them breath. His eyes swept over the assembled crowd, a mixture of confusion and disdain flickering across his face. The politician was a man accustomed to control, to authority, and here was a scene blossoming right under his nose that threatened to undermine everything he stood for. "What do you think you're doing?" he spat out, his voice barely concealing his irritation. "You're wasting your time with this foolishness. Unity? It's a pipe dream." Benedita felt the murmur of the crowd shift, fear mixing with resolve in a way that threatened to split them apart again. She took a deep breath, remembering the warmth of shared moments, the laughter, and the sense of belonging that could be found in a simple loaf of bread. It was now or never. "Do you think it's foolish to hope?" she challenged, stepping forward, her voice ringing like a bell. "To believe that we can overcome our differences? This town has suffered, but together we can heal. It's not the pastries that matter, it's what they stand for: a fresh start, a chance to rebuild." The crowd held its breath. Benedita could see faces shifting, uncertainty sparking in their eyes. The elderly man who had first spoken was nodding, urging others to reconsider their fear. She risked a glance at her children, their faces a mix of hope and anxiety, bolstering her shaky confidence. The politician's lips curled in disbelief. "By doing what? Baking? While our hospitals crumble, and we can't fend for ourselves. We have to start somewhere. Benedita replied, her heart racing. You know as well as anyone that it's the heart of a community that knits us together, not the government's hands. We all want the same thing to thrive. Let us do it together. We can save our stories as much as our structures, our bakery can feed both. Cheers rose again, louder now, drowning out the politicians' retorts. The tension that had filled the air moments earlier transformed into a hopeful current that surged through the group. Eyes sparkled with newfound energy, and, just like that, Benedita felt a rush of belief swell within her. Perhaps the tide was turning. Yet, the politician was not ready to concede defeat easily. You really think this will solve anything? You're just playing with fire. With courage tightening her throat, she responded, sometimes fire is exactly what we need to forge something new. We've been stagnant for too long. What if, instead of seeing struggle, we choose to see potential instead? To uplift one another, to infuse hope into our hearts. Before he could respond, a young woman from the back stood up, her voice quivering but strong. My sister was a nurse, she lost her job because of budget cuts. But I want a future here. I want to be proud of where I'm from. Maybe this is a start. The crowd erupted into applause, and whatever grip the politician had on their emotions began to crumble. The whisper of change echoed through Benedita's heart. The bakery table, once a mere display of baked goods, had transformed into a platform of transformation, of hope. The politician took a step back, clearly rattled. You've missed the bigger picture. This isn't about baking, he said. His voice was shaky now, angered but laced with fear of losing control. It's about human connection. Benedita shouted above the noise, her spirit lifting. No matter who we are or how much money we have, we all need each other. And this is how we start to heal together. As she spoke, the crowd surged forward, a wave of humanity taking shape. The warmth of their collective heartbeat pulsed around her. But just then, she caught sight of the politician's jaw tightening in frustration and something dark flicker in his eyes. Benedita's heart raced. Was he really ready to fight back? As tension hung thick once more, she reached for the hands of her children, drawing strength from their presence. Perhaps they stood on the edge of a monumental change, not just for their town but for the very fabric of who they were. But before she could ponder the next step, another voice rang out, a clear cut through the uncertainty. What do you fear losing, sir, if we all came together? The crowd turned again, uncertain of what this new voice might bring. Would it bring more division, or would it push the politician to see the truth? The air crackled, charged with emotion, and Benedita felt it. Change was coming, but at what cost? As shadows danced around them, the crowd leaned in, each heart holding a breath, ready for whatever would unfold next. The politician's eyes narrowed as he scanned the faces of the crowd, his mind racing. Uncertainty lingered over them like a thick fog, and he could feel the ground shifting beneath his feet. This was a delicate moment, teetering on the brink of despair and rejuvenation. With a tight grip on his podium, he tried to regain authority. Losing? What I fear losing is control. He shouted, voice laced with desperation. You're playing a dangerous game. It's naive to think that unity will cover the wounds of neglect and poverty. You're just offering words. A ripple of anxiety flickered through the crowd. They were hanging on his every word. Benedita sensed the hesitation, yet there was light gathering in their eyes, too. Words are the spark, she countered calmly, her voice soothing, yet unwavering. They ignite the fire within us. If we don't even try to connect, how will we ever heal? At that moment, a child's laughter broke through the tension, as a little boy raced past them with a homemade kite, its vibrant colors pulling smiles from the solemn faces. Benedita watched, her heart swelling. It was a simple moment, yet it echoed the resilience and hope that lived in every small action. The politician stiffened, wrestling with the truth of her words. In that instant, Benedita saw a crack in his armor. Could he really be swayed? Or was his heart too entrenched in the past? Another voice rose, this one fierce and proud. "I've been without work for too long," said a man with determined eyes, stepping forward. "I've lost more than my job. I've lost my dignity. And it's time we rebuild it together. We can't afford to wait." The crowd shifted again, murmurs of agreement grew. Benedita felt the energy surge, spinning around her like a warm breeze. With this collective weight of courage, they began to inch closer, eyes glistening with a mixture of hope and defiance. "We want to create something here," she exclaimed, pressing on. "A bakery won't just butter a loaf, it can butter our hearts back together. It's about bringing life back into our streets, our souls. There's pride in what we can accomplish, together." The politician pressed his lips together tightly, visibly torn. Benedita noticed beads of sweat beginning to form on his brow, his determination waning under the overwhelming force of their connection. "You think that building a bakery will fix the infrastructure this town lacks?" He scoffed, though his words lacked conviction. "Not just the bakery," she retorted, her voice resounding. "It's the people. United under one cause, we can force change. We'll bring business back. We'll make this a place where stories are told and futures created." Cheers erupted, strong enough to rattle the politician's stoic demeanor. Benedita stole a quick glance at her children, their brows relaxed with relief, smiles beginning to creep back onto their faces. She felt the weight of the past lifting, little by little. "Now is our time," Benedita continued, fueled by the energy surrounding her, "to reclaim our future. Stand with me, not against me. Together, we can do anything." The crowd's voices melded, a powerful chorus of support. Just as the air seemed ripe for a revolution, a crackling voice broke through the symphony. The politician's "Enough." His tone veered sharply, unveiling the rawness of his fear. "You dream of unity, but I see chaos. I will not allow you to take this town into darkness." Benedita's heart sunk as she felt the stark contrast between their uplifting hopes and his stark warnings. The crowd hesitated, tension gripping them once more, each heart bracing for the fallout. Could they turn his fear into compassion, or would it shatter everything they had built in this moment? Just as hope flickered like a candle in the wind, another voice emerged, this time older, yet wise, with a quivering strength. A mere volunteer baker from decades past, stepping forward. "Children are watching us. Will we become what we fear most?" As they leaned in, silence hurried across the masses. A question resonated in the air, waiting to be answered, one that could change everything. What would they choose, to crumble under doubt or rise together in a storm of hope? A hush fell over the crowd, a breath held collectively, as anticipation hung heavy in the air. Benedita could feel the eyes of her neighbors shifting from her to the politician, who stood rigid, caught in the storm of his own thoughts. She dared to hope that the old baker's words might pierce through the protective shell he had built around his heart. The politician's jaw clenched, yet for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. He had been wearing his fear like armor, but now it was beginning to feel heavy and cumbersome. Benedita knew this moment mattered. A small tremor in the atmosphere whispered that change was not only needed, but possible. "Hear me out," he began, hesitance coloring his voice. The murmurs swelled amongst the crowd, a soft undercurrent of disbelief. "I was once part of the community you speak of. I too dreamed of lifting this town back to its former glory. But dreams must align with reality." A heartbeat passed, and Benedita seized the moment. "What if this is the reality we create, together?" she urged, taking a brave step towards him. "It's not just hope we're clinging to, it's our determination as a community. No more waiting in the shadows. We deserve our stories, our futures." Another voice broke through the gathering tension. It was a middle-aged woman whose hands carried the weight of hard work and sacrifice. "You can't keep us quiet, not anymore," she proclaimed, her eyes wide with passion. "We've suffered long enough. We want a voice. We want to be part of the solution." The politician appeared caught between two worlds, the one that he had shielded himself in, where skepticism reigned, and the one that pulsed with the collective heartbeat of the people, throbbing with life and possibility. He turned slightly, opening himself to the crowd, searching their faces. As he did, he appeared if only for a moment to be the man he had once been, before politics consumed him. In that fleeting instance, Benedita reached out to him. "We can help each other," she said softly. "You hold the power to lead us towards a brighter future. It's not chaos we seek, it's connection. Show us that you believe in us." A ripple of murmurs returned, their energy palpable. She could feel the frustration slowly melting into something hopeful as people began to share their dreams, their fears, and even their laughter. Someone else stepped forward, an older gentleman whose voice was a rich baritone. "We need new roads. We need spaces to gather. We need to eat, drink, and live together as a community. Let us build this bakery, and then more." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound reaching a fever pitch. Benedita felt her heart race, matching the tempo of the clapping hands. But despite the joy radiating from the masses, she could sense the politician's continued hesitation. He looked down, momentarily lost in thought. "And what if I say yes?" he questioned finally, barely above a whisper, yet it landed like a thunderclap among them. "What if we fail?" "Then we'll fail together," Benedita countered softly, her eyes locking onto his. "But if you trust us, if we trust each other, we can forge something beautiful. Let us try." A contemplative silence fell once more, the crowd leaning in for his response. Benedita's heart pounded as the moment hung suspended in time, breaths bated on the edge of possibility. What choice would he make? Would he take the leap towards a new destiny, or retreat to the shadows of fear once more, leaving their dreams, and futures, in jeopardy? The crowd held its breath, and in that charged heartbeat, history stood ready to change. What would they all do next? The moment stretched, hanging like a thin thread ready to snap under the weight of anticipation. Benedita could almost feel the heartbeat of the crowd vibrating through her own chest. The politician's gaze drifted over the sea of expectant faces, each one pulling at him, propelling him to answer. She searched his eyes, looking for a glimpse of the man who had once walked amongst them, the man who had cared. He took a deep breath. "You're asking a lot of me," he said, his voice a fragile mix of reluctance and curiosity. "But perhaps the weight of my fears and failures has become too heavy to carry alone." A murmur rippled through the crowd, recognition of his vulnerability. At that moment, it felt like layers of years, silence, and distrust began to unravel. Benedita could see her neighbors' faces light up, a small flicker of hope igniting where despair had dwelled for far too long. "Together, we can stand up to fear," the woman from before chimed in again. "Together, we can create a future for our children, a safe place where dreams are nurtured, not stifled." The crowd responded with cheers, a chorus rising in defiance of the apathy that had so long gripped their town. The energy was palpable, an electric thrill that danced in the air. Benedita felt it swirl around her, a powerful force rising from the depth of their shared experiences. The politician's stance softened further, as his shoulders loosened ever so slightly. "You speak of dreams," and yet his voice trailed off as doubt clawed back at him, but the soft insistence of the crowd filled the gaps. "What if we fail?" he repeated, more to himself than to anyone else, that fear lingering like a shadow. "Then we'll learn," Benedita answered firmly, taking another step forward, emboldened by the moment. "And we'll try again. That's what a community does. We lift each other when we stumble, and we celebrate the victories together." A tear escaped the corner of the politician's eye, glistening under the evening sun as he absorbed her words. They weren't just empty promises, they came from a place of authenticity, a reflection of the real struggles and aspirations of the people he had once sworn to represent. Sensing a shift, the crowd leaned closer, their silent encouragement enveloping him like a warm embrace. He began, choked by the weight of unspoken words. Benedita held her breath, anticipation churning in her stomach as his eyes locked onto hers, searching for something he might find only in her gaze. She felt all their dreams hanging in the balance, and her heart begged him to choose. "And if I say yes," he continued slowly, "what then? How do we truly move forward?" A new voice, younger this time, emerged from the back. "We form a council." A boy shouted, his enthusiasm brimming over. "We work together. Plan the bakery. Make it ours." Cheers erupted again, the crowd growing more cohesive, voices intermingling in a beautiful symphony of hope. Benedita glanced around, feeling the unyielding spirit of her neighbors infusing the space with camaraderie, with resolve. The politician surveyed the crowd, seeing their unity, their hope a reflection of the very community he once strayed from. In that moment, Benedita sensed a crack forming in the wall he had built between himself and the town. "Then let us build," he started, his voice regaining strength. Behind him, there came a sudden commotion. A figure emerged from the back, stumbling forward. Benedita squinted, the figure growing clearer, a man she recognized from the old bakery, his face twisted in urgency. "You have to listen," he shouted, struggling to be heard above the joyous noise. "There is something you all need to know." The unmistakable tension instantly returned. Benedita's heart raced. What revelation could cut through their moment of hope? What truth loomed ahead, ready to reshape everything? The emotions surged through the crowd, transforming cheers into anxious murmurs as the man from the bakery, Victor, made his way forward. Benedita's stomach twisted with unease. She knew Victor well, a gentle soul with a heart that once overflowed with laughter, but something in his eyes told her this was not a moment for joy. "Victor, what's wrong?" she called out, her voice fighting to break through the din. "They're going to come after us." His words sliced through the air like a knife, igniting a fresh wave of fear. "The owners of the warehouse, Hernandez and his crew. They're planning to shut us down, to tear apart everything we hope to build." Gasps echoed among the crowd. The flicker of hope that had just ignited flickered uncertainly now, wavering in the wind of impending trouble. Benedita felt her heart drop. How could they let this happen? "We won't let them," the politician stepped forward, his voice firm. "Not again. Not again," Benedita echoed, feeling the weight of history there, the weight of forgotten voices that had tried and failed before. She remembered the stories of her parents, how they fought for what was right when their dreams were crushed. But how? A voice cried out, trembling with despair. "They've got money, power, they own everything. We have each other," Benedita said, her voice rising with passion. "We've watched our children grow up in this town. We know our neighbors, our struggles, that's our strength. We can't allow fear to have the final word." Victor nodded, but his face still bore lines of worry. "They're strong, Benedita. They have connections that run deep." Sensing the worry engulfing them, the politician turned to the crowd and took a deep breath. "Then we expose them. Not just as individuals, but as a movement. If we rally together and shine a light on their actions, we make them answerable to us. It's time we hold them accountable." A flicker of energy returned, igniting determination amid the fear. Benedita felt it surge again, washing over the crowd like a warm embrace. "We band together. We gather evidence, share our stories. We put a face to our community, the people they would threaten." Encouragement started to ripple amongst the crowd, faces lighting up with renewed purpose. Benedita's heart raced with the feeling of something greater than herself, greater than the town they resided in. "But we'll need a plan," the boy who first spoke up chimed in again. "We need a way to confront them. We can't just sit and wait for our fate." "Yes," Benedita shouted with a determination that surprised her. "We need to form our council, gather our allies, talk to others who have suffered, and make a united front. It won't just be about saving the bakery, it'll be about saving our community. Our children." Victor's expression shifted, a flicker of hope peeking through. But if we do this, we may face retaliation. They may come for us. Let them come. Benedita declared, her voice echoing across the square. If they want to silence us, we'll roar back even louder. We have a chance to show that we won't be bullied anymore. The crowd erupted, voices rising with fervor, and Benedita felt its grip on her, binding them all together. But as the cheers echoed, a shadow loomed on the outskirts. One man stood apart, watching with a calculating gaze. Benedita's skin prickled, though the crowd was vibrating with resilience, a foreboding sense of dread began to settle in her gut. What had they awakened? Do you think we can hold that? Can we fight for it? She whispered to herself, feeling a weight fall back onto her shoulders. The next chapter awaited, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was only beginning. Would their voices be enough to stand against the looming darkness? Benedita's heart raced, the pulse of the gathering echoing her own anxiety. She felt as if the world were closing in around them, yet here they stood, stronger than ever. The cheers of resolve bounced off the buildings, powerful and defiant, yet she clung to watchfulness. That shadow at the edge of the square haunted her thoughts. "All right," the politician shouted to regain the crowd's focus. "We need to assemble a meeting, where everyone can come together to discuss what we'll do next. We'll meet at the community center tomorrow evening. Bring your stories, your fire. We need every voice." Nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, igniting a flicker of hope in Benedita's chest. Maybe they could turn this around. Maybe they could stand tall against Hernandez's looming threat. But there was still that dread hovering, waiting in the background. "Victor!" she shouted, waving him over as the crowd began to disperse. "We need to talk. We can't just gather stories, we need a strategy. What if we confront Hernandez directly?" He glanced at her, concern knitting his brow. "I'm not sure that's wise, Benedita. They play hardball. We're just a group of people trying to make a difference, they are a force. What if we're not prepared?" His words weighed heavily on her. What if they weren't prepared? But those stories, those hopes rested not just in her hands but in the collective dreams of the people who depended on one another. We can't live in fear forever. We have to confront them. If we wait too long we may be waiting for our defeat, Victor finished for her. The community center buzzed with life the next evening, families gathered, sharing nervous laughter and anxious whispers. Chairs were set in a circle, and the walls bore witness to the warmth they brought. Benedita felt it pulsating, the warmth of shared dreams, the tight bond of shared struggles. Loud voices erupted as people shared their stories and fears. It was as if a dam had burst. An elderly woman, with hair the color of ashes, held her shaking hands to the audience. "They took my shop when I couldn't pay a bill just like that. It was my husband's dream too. I want to let them take another dream from our community." The room swelled with emotion. They all ached for their dreams, and they were rising together. With every story shared, Benedita felt that tight knot in her stomach loosen slightly. Though they were terrified, they were all fighting for something. Beneath that fear lay the pure beat of determination. "Okay," she finally spoke up, her voice cutting through the emotions in the air, keeping them anchored. "We've heard each other. Now, we must act. Let us come up with a plan. What kind of evidence can we gather? Who reaches out to the media? Who can speak for us?" A wave of hands shot up, enthusiasm eclipsing some fears. Ideas flowed like a river, each person adding to the current. The meeting was electric, and Benedita felt herself getting swept up in it. But outside, in the shadows, the man from before watched. His expression held a glint of something dark, his gaze fixed on the building, where the voices rose in unity. What did he know? What was he planning? "Benedita," Victor's voice grounded her, pulling her back to the friendly chaos. "Focus." She nodded, heart pounding. They were igniting something, kindling a fire, but was it bright enough to drown out the shadows lurking outside? She couldn't let fear take hold. She wouldn't. As the room filled with new strategies and discussions, she felt set on a path forward. But beneath that hopeful surge, a chilling thought crept in. What if Hernandez already knew about their plans? What if he was preparing to strike back before they could even move? The realization hit her hard. They were stepping into a battle that promised no easy outcome. Would their courage stand against the storm brewing outside the walls of their unity? Benedita sat among the hum of excited voices, her mind racing as plans took shape around her. The energy in the room was palpable, yet a heaviness loomed over her. The shadows outside pressed closer, and she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Who can gather evidence from the tenants? Someone shouted. I can talk to Maria, called out another. I know her story well. Benedita felt her heart soar. The threads of community were weaving tighter. Yet, as adrenaline coursed through her, a knot of anxiety twisted in her gut. We need to make sure our evidence is solid. If they retaliate. Victor leaned in, his eyes wide. You're thinking about the worst-case scenario, Benedita. We can't let fear dictate our actions. Fear is what brought us here, she shot back, glancing towards the window. And now, it feels like it's watching us. As the night wore on, they parted ways, but Benedita lingered in her thoughts. She walked home under a canopy of stars, their shimmer reminding her of the flickers of hope within their fight. She couldn't shake those dark eyes from her mind. Who was he? What else did he see? That night, as she lay in bed, sleep eluded her. Her thoughts spiraled. She envisioned the man outside, lurking in the shadows, like a ghost from the past, feeding off fear. What if he was a messenger of Hernandez? The rain began to fall, soft at first, then with increasing intensity, hammering down on the roof, drowning out her thoughts. Morning arrived, and with it, a surge of energy among the community. They came together again, each face showing the determination to reclaim their rights. Conversations buzzed around her as they mapped out plans on sheets of paper, each pen stroke adding to their story. Benedita, you should lead the speaking points for next week's gathering, Victor suggested. Uncertainty gnawed at her. What if I freeze? What if I can't find the words? You have been finding words since this began. You ignite passion, Benedita. Just remember the stories we've heard. They're what we stand for, he replied, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Apprehension sank in, but so did a spark of courage. She envisioned the old woman's trembling hands, her passion and heartbreak now entwined with their mission. That afternoon, they convened to prepare for the media. News reporters were arriving to cover the meeting. Benedita stood at the front, rehearsing her lines in secret, her voice shaking but steady. She would speak for the dreams that had been shattered, for every voice that had been muted. Right before the gathering started, a text buzzed through her phone. It was from an unknown number. We're watching you. Panic pierced through her resolve. Who was this? Her heart raced, and she felt the world narrow, once again threatening to engulf her in shadows. Victor noticed her distress. What's wrong? Just a message, she replied, forcing a smile, though her heart sank deeper. As the crowd settled, the reporters began to roll in, cameras flashing. Benedita swallowed hard, time stretching like taffy. She felt the weight of every story, every lifetime, resting on her shoulders. They had all entrusted their dreams to her now. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready to share their truths, ready to ignite the fire they had all kindled together. But the whisper from the shadows coiled in her mind. What if this was only the beginning? What if unraveling their dreams led to darker confrontations with Hernandez and his men? As she faced the crowd, the weight of her choice loomed large. Would this act of courage bring their community together or deepen their divide? The moment of truth stood just beyond reach, and with it, an overwhelming realization clawed at her. What if the shadows were right on the precipice of their dreams, waiting for them to stumble? The room fell silent, a hush weaving through the gathered crowd like a soft embrace. Benedita looked out at the faces staring back at her, some anxious, some hopeful, yet all united by purpose. She could feel their hearts beating in unison, a rhythm of courage and determination that spurred her on. She stepped to the front, her heart racing but resolute. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady. "We've gathered because we know our worth. We know our stories. And now, we're ready to make them heard." The glowing lights of the cameras felt intense, but they illuminated not just her face but the collective spirit standing behind her. The weight of their hopes, struggles, and dreams pressed against her, but she held it like a badge. "We cannot allow fear to grip our hearts anymore," she continued, letting each word drum against the walls of the gathering. "We felt powerless for too long, and it's time to reclaim our strength. We are more than just bakery owners, more than just families struggling to make ends meet. We are a community, one heart beating strong." As she spoke, she saw nods of agreement ripple through the crowd, grim, tired faces igniting with a spark of resilience. "Today, we stand on the threshold of change," she urged, lifting her chin. "We fight not just for a bakery but for our dignity, our right to exist in this town without fear and intimidation. We demand respect." Cheers erupted, a wave of harmony crashing against the shores of doubt. Benedita took a breath, allowing the momentum to carry her. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of Victor, his encouraging smile reminding her of the bond they all shared. "And yes, it may feel daunting," she paused, scanning the crowd, "but together, we are unstoppable. We will gather our testimonies. We will shine a light on those who think they can push us aside. Hernandez may think he holds the power, but he is mistaken." The crowd erupted again, a current of voices rising, "We are stronger." In that heartbeat of unity, Benedita felt the shadows from her earlier anxieties lift. There was a movement brewing, a purpose that transcended her individual fears. As the news cameras rolled, the atmosphere crackled with possibility. She could see the crowd rallying behind her, joining in the fight for their dreams and their future. But amidst the applause, the nagging doubt of the text pulsed quietly in her mind. They were being watched. Despite that knowledge, Benedita pressed on. "We all have stories, struggles we've endured. It's time for us to share them. If we want real change, we can't just speak in whispers. We need to stand loud and proud." With that, she motioned for those who wished to share. One by one, voices emerged from the crowd, weaving a tapestry of tales that laid bare the town's struggle against encroaching darkness. Each voice brought life to fragile dreams, threads of understanding spinning tighter and tighter until they formed a blanket of unified resistance. It was an emotional release. The laughter of children was abundant, and tears of remembrance rolled down cheeks of elders, all part of a rich history that was theirs to own again. Benedita felt herself coming alive, spurred on by the bravery of those facing the same shadows. As she stepped back, there was a warmth around her, the weight of their collective stories buoying her spirit as she caught Victor's eye again. His steady nod filled her with fresh resolve. Suddenly, the doors swung open. In the entryway stood the man she recognized, a dark figure stepping in like a storm cloud. The atmosphere shifted, excitement giving way to trepidation. "Do you really think you can band together against what you can't understand?" Hernandez sneered, his voice sharp, cutting through the hopeful chatter. "You're a bunch of dreamers, nothing more." Benedita's heart sank, but she steadied herself. "And you're outnumbered," she shot back, feeling the strength of her community at her back. "Together, we create change, you only represent fear." His stare bore into hers, yet she held it, refusing to let his darkness overwhelm her or the voices around her. The room filled with murmurs, uncertainty thickening the air as they looked to Benedita for guidance. She could feel the swell of emotions rushing through her. Every story shared, every nod of courage blending into one fierce river of determination. "What do you want, Benedita?" he taunted, eyes narrowing. "Do you really believe you can take on the likes of me?" "I want our stories to be recognized. She replied fiercely, her heart pounding with emphasis. I want my children to grow up in a town where they feel safe and valued, where no one silences them because of fear. Her words hung heavy in the air. The crowd shifted at her courage, emboldening the flames she had ignited together with them. You think unity solves everything? It's nonsense, Hernandez spat, his frustration mounting. You'll only make things worse. We may stumble, we may face challenges, but we'll rise together. Benedita's voice rang out, sparking the crowd to respond, fire kindling within them again. We're not afraid of the fight, not anymore. As the embers of newfound determination crackled in the air, Benedita felt the division that had once oppressed her heart begin to fade. She saw eyes sparkling with hope, arms raised toward the collective dream of a brighter future. In that moment, Benedita realized the truth: they were not just fighting for a bakery, for their survival, but for each other. Hernandez's scorn could never extinguish the passion that pulsed through them, nor the love they held for their community. We are not just names or numbers. We are a family. And together, we will shine a light so bright that even the darkest fears have nowhere to hide, Benedita pronounced, feeling the power of her words echo throughout the room. As the dusk settled outside, the flicker of dawn began to rise within each heart gathered. The fight was far from over, but Benedita knew they were standing on the precipice of change. And with their stories behind her and their hearts beside her, she welcomed whatever lay ahead with open arms. Right then, a wave of resolve surged through the crowd, shaking off shadows and doubt. That shadowed figure would soon know what it meant to face a united front, a front built on hope, the kind that couldn't be extinguished. In the coming days, Benedita vowed to harness the whispers of their truths, to speak for those who had felt powerless long enough. They would share their stories, gather strength, and finally, take back what was rightfully theirs. She stood taller, lighter, ready to step boldly into this new chapter, unshakable and fiercely dedicated to her loved ones and her community. And together, they would change their world, one act of love at a time. You need to subscribe now to witness more tales of transformation and inspiration. This is the moment to show your support for our journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost our reach. Comment below your thoughts on this incredible ending, and don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let us spread the love and unity.